tonight, family and friends want to know how a 21-year-old Hendersonville woman died in Center Hill Lake.
She camped this weekend on the edge of a cliff. Her body found Sunday in the water below.
All camped out, everything was awesome.
We all drank, had a good old time. Eventually we ended up making our way all back to the campsite. I honestly wasn't really worried about it because I didn't think anything had happened. I didn't think anything would happen.
We were like, well, maybe somebody came and got her. And then we went down to the boat dock and we waited and waited and waited.
I woke up and I woke him up and I said, "Where's Lauren?" And he said, "She got up a while ago." He was like, "But I didn't feel her or anything." And I said, "Okay, have you seen her since?" And he said, "No." And I asked how long. He said he wasn't. She didn't have her shoes. She didn't have her keys, wallet, phone. And she would not leave without that stuff, you know? Yeah.
This is one of the most unsettling cases I have ever come across. A young woman's life ended under mysterious circumstances, and while the official ruling labeled it an accident, many believe the evidence suggests something more complicated. Lauren was just 21 years old. Born on August 19, 1993, in Biloxi, Mississippi, she spent most of her life in Hendersonville, Tennessee, with her mother Sherry, stepfather Michael, and 3 siblings, Allison, Jordan, and Joshua. Lauren was full of energy and life. She was described as hilarious, passionate, and kind-hearted, always bringing laughter to those around her. She had a love for sports, especially gymnastics and dance, earning multiple medals along the way. She would spend hours perfecting choreographed routines from music videos, and her talent didn't go unnoticed. She was even offered a dance scholarship for college. But Lauren had bigger dreams. She chose to study criminal justice instead, wanting to make a difference in the world. With a loving family, great friends, and a bright future ahead, Lauren's life was heading in a positive direction, until the summer of 2015.
On July 24, 2015, Lauren attended WakeFest, a popular wakeboarding festival at Center Hill Lake, Tennessee. The event was lively and crowded, known for its exciting competitions, live music, and late-night celebrations. Lauren went to the festival with 3 others, her close friend Hannah Palmer, Hannah's boyfriend Aaron Lilly, and Chris Stout. Hannah later stated that she didn't know Chris very well and that Lauren had never met him before that weekend. Lauren's mother, Sherry, had mixed feelings about this trip. She wasn't particularly fond of Hannah as a friend for Lauren. She felt that their friendship was inconsistent, that Hannah would often drift away whenever she was in a new relationship, only reaching out when it was convenient for her. Despite these concerns, Lauren was excited to go. She wanted to experience WakeFest, and Sherry didn't want to hold her back. But something didn't feel right. That uneasy, gut-wrenching feeling that only a mother's intuition can bring. She couldn't shake the sense that something was off. But she let Lauren go. She gave her a big hug, told her to be safe, and watched her walk away. She didn't know it at the time, but that would be the last time she ever saw her daughter alive.
Lauren and Hannah met up with the 2 men at WakeFest and spent the day enjoying the festival atmosphere. They watched water sports, socialized, and even took part in cliff diving, a popular but high-risk activity in the area. The cliffs were steep, rocky, and largely unregulated. The water below was unpredictable, with hidden rocks that weren't always visible beneath the shifting waves. When it was Lauren's turn to jump, she carefully avoided the visible hazards. But just as she neared the water, a hidden rock emerged from beneath the surface. She hit the back of her head. For a brief moment, she was disoriented. Some believe she may have sustained a minor concussion, but after regaining her composure, she continued with the rest of the day. That evening, the group went to a bar. Surveillance footage captured Lauren inside, smiling, laughing, and full of energy. She showed no visible signs of distress or serious injury. At 2 a.m., cameras recorded them leaving the bar and heading toward the docks. They planned to take a boat back to their campsite, a decision that would later raise serious questions.
The campsite they had chosen that night was far from the main festival grounds, It was isolated, only accessible by boat, and surrounded by steep cliffs and rough terrain. The journey back was dark and difficult. The water was calm, but the surroundings were almost impossible to see. In a video from that night, Lauren can be heard making a chilling statement: "We're going into a death trap."
We're in a canoe on the lake. It's a cliff on both sides. Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
We're going into a death trap.
Her words would later haunt those who have studied this case. The sleeping arrangements were also far from ideal. Hannah and Aaron shared a tent together. Lauren and Chris, who had just met, were expected to share a hammock. But the placement of that hammock? It was right near the edge of the cliff. One side had a 35-foot drop into the lake. The other, a 90-foot fall onto jagged rocks. Lauren wasn't comfortable with this setup. Not only did she barely know Chris, but the location of the hammock made her uneasy. Despite this, she had little choice but to go along with the plan.
What Lauren didn't know was that this wasn't an official WakeFest campsite. The land they were camping on was not regulated by the festival. There were no safety measures, no fencing, no designated areas. The official camping spots were elsewhere, in cabins and designated sites, but many attendees chose to camp in this remote area because it was convenient and easy to access by boat. Lauren had assumed they were staying in a cabin, so when she learned that wasn't the plan, she was caught off guard. She tried to find a different place to stay. She even asked other festival goers if she could sleep in their cabins. That's when she ran into Cassie Franks, an old friend who had been to WakeFest before. Cassie knew this campsite well, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She told Lauren she had camped there once before and swore she would never do it again. She described the land as steep, rocky, and dangerous. To get to the top, campers had to climb unstable terrain, using only a single rope tied to a tree to prevent themselves from falling. Cassie's cabin was full. Lauren had nowhere else to go, and so, despite her concerns, she stayed at the campsite. She climbed into the hammock near the cliffside and settled in for the night, not knowing that this would be the last night of her life.
The next morning, July 26, 2015, Hannah woke up. The sun was rising over Center Hill Lake, and the campsite was quiet. She got up and walked over to the hammock where Lauren should have been sleeping. But Lauren wasn't there. Concerned, Hannah woke up Chris and asked if he knew where she was. According to Chris, Lauren had woken up in the middle of the night, but he wasn't sure when she left or where she went. Hannah said she immediately started searching. As she looked around the campsite, something strange caught her attention. Lauren's personal belongings were still there. Her flip-flops, purse, and phone, everything she would normally take with her, left behind. In a later interview, Hannah stated that Lauren would never leave without those items. But despite this, the group did not report her missing. They assumed that she had wandered off on her own and would return soon, but she never did. At 4:20 p.m., hours after she was last seen, two fishermen on the lake made a discovery that would change everything. The fishermen spotted something floating in a cove. At first, they weren't sure what they were looking at, but as they got closer, their worst fears were confirmed. It was a body. They were shaken, terrified, and immediately contacted the authorities. When law enforcement arrived, the fishermen led them to the location of the body, and this is where the case takes an unexpected turn. Lauren was found in a place she could not have reached on her own. It was too far from the campsite for her to have simply fallen into the water. Investigators also noted that the lake's current was moving in the opposite direction that night, meaning her body could not have drifted naturally to where it was found. So, how did she end up there? Before police could even reach her body, something strange happened. A man in a canoe was seen paddling toward the cove, heading directly for the location where Lauren's body had been discovered. Police officers called out to him, instructing him to turn back, but his response left them with even more questions. He said, "But that could be one of our friends over there." The man in the canoe was Aaron Lilly, but this raises a crucial question. At that moment, only 4 people knew about the discovery: the 2 fishermen and the 2 police officers. The public had not been informed. Even the authorities had not yet seen the body themselves. So how did Aaron already know there was a body in the cove? And why was he so eager to get to it before law enforcement? Some speculate that he may have heard about it from someone else. But even if that were the case, why did he assume it was Lauren? And if he was genuinely concerned, why didn't he call the police himself? To this day, these questions remain unanswered.
Lauren's body was removed from the water and sent for an autopsy. The results showed that she had twice the legal limit of alcohol in her system. The official cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head with possible drowning. Investigators initially believed that she had fallen from the hammock due to intoxication, and based on these findings, her death was ruled an accident. But this is where the case becomes complicated. After the autopsy results were released, two individuals came forward with a different perspective. One was Officer Chris Yarchuk, who had seen Lauren and her group leaving the bar that night. The other was forensic scientist Mark Gillespie. Both of them questioned the fall theory. Mark Gillespie, in an interview with MTV, stated that Lauren's injuries did not fully match what would be expected from a fall of that height. Yes, Lauren had bruising, but according to him, if she had fallen from such a distance, her bruises would have been significantly deeper and more severe. She also had a few scrapes, but forensic experts pointed out that a fall onto jagged rocks would likely cause far more extensive cuts and lacerations. Her clothing was intact, which some found unusual, as falling through rough terrain often results in tears or damage to fabric. But the most critical detail? There was no water in her lungs or stomach, a key indicator that she may not have drowned. This led some to believe that Lauren was not alive when she entered the water.
After hearing this, Lauren's mother knew she had to dig deeper. She hired private investigator Sheila, a seasoned expert who had previously helped solve a cold case. Sheila took a closer look at the autopsy report and crime scene evidence. And what she found raised even more questions. One significant finding was hemorrhaging in Lauren's neck, which some experts associate with restricted airflow. Additionally, there was a distinct mark on Lauren's upper body. Some believe this resembled a bite mark, though initial examiners dismissed it as an injury from hitting the rocks. This was not the only point of contention. When Lauren's body was examined, some key forensic tests were never conducted. One of the most debated aspects of this case was that no swabs or forensic evidence collection were performed. The reason given? Lauren was wearing a tampon at the time, and authorities initially believed that this made further testing unnecessary. However, many experts disagree with this reasoning. It was later determined that Lauren was not on her menstrual cycle at the time of her death, which added to speculation about whether this detail had another explanation. Additionally, her clothing did not appear to belong to her. Sherry stated that she had never seen her daughter wear those clothes before, including the bra she was found in. Even the way Lauren was dressed raised questions. Her bra strap was tangled, something most women would adjust immediately due to discomfort. And while the bra had 3 clasps, only one had been fastened. To some, this suggested that Lauren may not have dressed herself before her passing.
Despite these discrepancies, the initial medical examination concluded that Lauren's injuries were not the result of foul play. Instead, pathologists suggested that the marks on her body, including the suspected bite mark, could have been caused by hitting rocks during a fall. Even the crushing of her throat was attributed to a potential impact with a rock at the bottom of the cliff. However, some have pointed out that this type of injury is often seen in cases where force is applied to the neck. Additionally, Lauren sustained a broken nose and broken fingers. Some experts believe these injuries could have occurred during a fall, but others question whether they could have been defensive injuries, possibly from an attempt to protect herself. One particularly debated finding was 2 large bruises on both of Lauren's thighs. Private investigator Sheila Wysocki believes these could indicate that pressure had been applied to her legs, potentially restricting her movement. While these details remain heavily debated, the official ruling has not changed. Lauren's death is still considered an accident, but for those who continue to investigate, the question remains: was Lauren's death truly the result of a fall, or is there more to the story?
Even though Lauren's death was officially ruled an accident, many people believe there are unanswered questions. not just because of the details surrounding the case, but because of where her body was found. Typically, in drowning cases, victims are discovered beneath the surface of the water. This is because water fills the lungs, causing the body to sink. While floating can occur in some cases, it is not the most common outcome. However, forensic scientist Mark Gillespie pointed out something unusual in Lauren's autopsy report. There was no water in her lungs or stomach. This led some experts to theorize that Lauren may not have drowned and that she was already unconscious or deceased before entering the water. But that wasn't the only unusual detail. There was also a distinct triangular mark on Lauren's stomach. Some theorists have speculated that this mark could be linked to a canoe, the same type of canoe used for transportation between the campsite and the main area of WakeFest. According to this theory, the shape of the mark may be consistent with pressure from the edge of a canoe. However, there is uncertainty surrounding this idea. For the mark to have been caused by a canoe, Lauren's upper body would have needed to be inside the canoe, while her lower body was in the water. Given that Lauren was only 105 pounds, some believe this could have caused the canoe to tip over, unless there were multiple people inside, stabilizing it. While this theory remains unproven, it has contributed to ongoing speculation regarding the circumstances of her passing.
In an effort to understand what really happened, Lauren's family and private investigator conducted their own experiment. They used a mannequin with Lauren's exact height and weight and dropped it from the edge of the campsite where she had been sleeping. They performed over 50 test drops. The results? Most of the mannequins got tangled in the thick brush below the cliff. Even if one had reached the bottom, it would have had to roll over sharp rocks before entering the water. To reach the cove where Lauren was found, the body would have had to float around a 35-foot bend. However, the current was moving in the opposite direction that night. This has led some to question whether Lauren could have naturally ended up in the cove on her own. To this day, these findings remain a major point of debate in the case. After Lauren's body was discovered, police conducted interviews with those who had been with her that night. Hannah, Aaron, and Chris were not considered suspects. Police simply wanted to gather more information about Lauren and the events leading up to her disappearance. Officer Ryan Melanson interviewed Aaron and Chris. According to him, the two men appeared nervous and anxious throughout the conversation. Additionally, they did not show much emotion when discussing Lauren's passing. Hannah's statements also raised some questions. At one point, she claimed that she had seen Lauren with an older man in a canoe before heading to bed. She also suggested that Lauren may have been planning to meet up with an ex-boyfriend, even though Lauren was known to be in a happy relationship, and this ex had never been mentioned in any previous part of the case. Chris added that Lauren had planned to meet someone that night, but did not provide any further details about who that person might have been. Another theory Hannah suggested was that Lauren may have fallen off the cliff while going to the bathroom. Since there were no outhouses at the campsite, the group had designated a specific area for this purpose. However, investigators tested this theory using a mannequin. Their results showed that if Lauren had fallen in that location, she likely would have survived. Despite all of this, once the interviews were over, the group continued on with their plans. According to witnesses, they spent the next 2 days drinking and partying, as if nothing had happened. This raised concerns for some, as Lauren had been their friend, and yet none of them attended her funeral. Another unsettling detail came from festival attendees, who reported seeing a campfire near the ledge where Lauren had been last seen. While it could have been an ordinary campfire, some wondered if it may have been used for another purpose. To this day, no one has been able to confirm who started that fire or why.
As the investigation continued, police began speaking with people outside of the group who had connections to Lauren. One of the first people they spoke to was Cassie Franks, Lauren's friend, who she had run into at WakeFest the night before her death. Cassie also happened to be Aaron Lilly's ex-girlfriend. During her interview, she described her past relationship with Aaron as troubling and told police that he had been aggressive. She even provided photos of past injuries, which she claimed had been inflicted by him. Some people found this detail notable, given that Lauren also had injuries on her body, but official reports stated that her injuries were consistent with a fall. Police also questioned Jade, another one of Lauren's close friends. Jade had not been at WakeFest, but she had been texting Lauren throughout the night, just hours before she died. According to Jade, Lauren had been feeling uncomfortable and unhappy that evening. At one point, Lauren even asked Jade to come pick her up. She wanted to go home. Jade told police that she had considered picking Lauren up, but it was late, dark, and she wasn't familiar with the area, so she ultimately decided against it. Meanwhile, in Hannah's initial interview, she told police that Lauren wanted to leave so badly that she was willing to drive home while intoxicated. Hannah stated that this was why they took Lauren's car keys. However, others at WakeFest later contradicted this claim. Several people told police that Lauren had vented to them about wanting to leave, not because she wanted to drive, but because she felt that Hannah and the others were treating her poorly. Some theorize that Lauren never actually planned to drive herself home, as she had reportedly asked multiple people if they could give her a ride. This has led to two competing theories. 1. The group took Lauren's keys to keep her safe from driving under the influence. 2. Lauren never intended to drive at all, and they took her keys for a different reason. To this day, which version is true remains a mystery.
One of the most unusual testimonies came from a man named Chris Brown, a festival goer who had no connection to the group. Chris had been camping with his wife and kids near the lake, not far from WakeFest. He told police that sometime around midnight, he witnessed a man struggling in the water, trying to swim toward the dock. He described the man as exhausted, spitting up water, and clearly shaken. According to Chris, the man climbed onto the dock and said that he had almost drowned while swimming back from the camping ledge. Chris later stated that he believed the man was Aaron Lilly. He said the person he saw matched Aaron's physical description and was wearing knee-length American flag swim trunks, the same shorts Aaron had been wearing that night. However, this account was controversial for one reason. Chris claimed this happened around midnight. But there was confirmed surveillance footage showing Lauren and her group leaving the bar at 2 a.m. If Chris's timeline was correct, that would mean Aaron was back at the dock 2 hours before Lauren was last seen alive. Could Chris have been mistaken about the time? It was late at night, and he may not have been keeping track of the exact hour. Or was this detail simply inaccurate? To this day, Chris Brown's testimony remains a debated piece of this case.
After WakeFest ended, the group returned home. Lauren's passing had shaken many in the community. Her friends, family, and those who knew her were left searching for answers. But then, something unexpected happened. Not long after returning home, Chris Stout posted a photo on Instagram. His caption, "Best weekend ever." It left many questioning. How could someone describe this particular weekend that way? And yet, even more unsettling was the fact that none of them attended Lauren's funeral. Not even Hannah, the person who had been described as her best friend. A few months later, Hannah and Aaron moved to Florida together. And around that same time, something even more unusual began happening online. Strange comments and false claims about Lauren's case started surfacing on the internet. Some of these statements were misleading, cruel, and dismissive of the circumstances. This caught the attention of private investigator Sheila. She decided to take a closer look. Through digital tracing, Sheila discovered that some of these comments were linked to an IP address from Florida, where Hannah and Aaron had recently moved. Sheila then took a bold step. She traveled to Florida to interview Hannah and Aaron on camera. During the interview, Hannah once again recounted her version of events from the night Lauren was last seen. She insisted that Chris Stout had nothing to do with what happened. But then, something unusual happened. In the middle of the interview, Hannah's phone rang. It was Aaron, and while Sheila couldn't hear the full conversation, she believed she heard Aaron telling Hannah, "Stick to the story."
In 2021, Lauren's mother Sherry took action. She filed a $10 million wrongful death lawsuit against Hannah, Aaron, and Chris. But when the time came for testimony, all three pleaded the Fifth Amendment, choosing not to answer questions. The judge ultimately ruled that there was not enough evidence to move forward with the wrongful death lawsuit against Hannah. However, the civil cases against Aaron and Chris remain open. After the case was dismissed, Hannah released a statement. She said, "The profound sadness I experienced when learning of the death of my best friend, Lauren Agee, has only been approached by the painful allegations that I somehow contributed to her demise." But for those who had followed the case closely, it raised even more questions. Why had she never attended Lauren's funeral? Why did she continue partying just days after her passing? And why had misleading comments about Lauren appeared online, seemingly traced back to where she and Aaron lived? Since then, Hannah and Aaron have become engaged.
To this day, Lauren's case remains officially ruled an accident. But for her family, friends, and those who have spent years investigating, there are still so many unanswered questions. If Lauren's death was truly an accident, why do so many aspects of this case not add up? And if there was nothing more to investigate, why are there still so many conflicting stories? Lauren's family is not giving up. They continue to push for answers, to challenge the ruling, and to uncover the full truth. Because until that truth is revealed, justice has not been served. Lauren Agee was just 21 years old. She had dreams, ambition, and a future ahead of her. But one summer night in 2015, everything changed. Her official cause of death was ruled an accident. But for those who have spent years looking into this case, there are still far too many unanswered questions. If Lauren simply fell, why do some experts believe her injuries don't fully match a fall? If her friends were innocent, why did their statements change over time? And if there was nothing suspicious about that night, why do so many details still not add up? Her family and investigators continue to seek the truth, because until that truth is revealed, justice for Lauren remains unfinished.
What do you think really happened to Lauren? Do you believe her death was an accident, or is there more to the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this case interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future true crime cases just like this one.